Okay, the reading for this week is the next part in our series on classical and medieval and pre-modern and early modern Japanese civilization, culture, history. And today we'll be reading a excerpt from an essay by Tokugawa Ieyasu on military government and the social order. And Tokugawa Ieyasu, for those of you who don't already know, most of you do though, born 1543, died in 1616. He was the third of the three great unifiers of Japan. Okay, the three great unifiers are Tokugawa Ieyasu, Oda Nobunaga, and Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And Toyotomi Hideyoshi, I'll give the dates for those three great unifiers in the description below. But Tokugawa Ieyasu was also the founder of the Tokugawa Shogunate, of course, that ruled Japan from 1603 to 1868. The establishment of a stable national regime was a substantial achievement, and this follows, of course, the period of the Sengoku Jidai, right, the period of warring states and the period of unification, in which Japan lacked effective and durable central government for well over a century prior to Ieyasu's rise. Okay, so the Tokugawa period is a period of relative isolation from the rest of the world and a period of peace in the realm. The Pax Tokugawa, it's sometimes referred to as. Creating the Tokugawa system of rule required a variety of sweeping political and social reforms, none perhaps with a more profound impact than the division of society into the four hereditary status groups or classes based on occupation, known in Japanese as the Shi no Kōshō hierarchy, right? The Shi no Kōshō, and this of course comes from Chinese Confucianism, with the Shi or the samurai on the top, followed by the Nung in Chinese, the No, the peasants, followed by the Ko, or the artisans, and then the merchants on the bottom, right? And there's other groups, the Eta, for example, that don't fit into this schema, but we'll discuss those in detail in class for now. And there's also the peerage and the Kazoku and the emperor and so forth at the very top that are above this four-tier structure. We'll discuss that in class, but for now, just remember the Shi no Kōshō, these four tiers of Japanese society. In this short document, written by an unidentified retainer in the early 17th century, so at the beginning of the Tokugawa period, Ieyasu's conception of the Tokugawa social hierarchy is recorded. So again, if you haven't memorized the dates of the major Japanese periods, do so immediately. I'll put them in the description below. And once again, the excerpts, the English translation is taken here from Sources of Japanese Tradition, Volume 1. I'll put the link to that work by William Theodore de Barry, Ryu Sakatsunoda, below. Right, the first edition of that came out in 1964. Okay, so there is the abridged version and the longer version. I'll read the longer version here, but I'll start with the questions on the study guide. And once again, these study PDF worksheets were put together by somebody at Columbia University. I'll put the link to that in the description below as well. Question number 1. Why do you think occupations were ranked in this order in Tokugawa Japan? Okay, with the shizoku or the bushi, with the samurai at the top, followed by the peasants, artisans, and the merchants at the bottom. Why are merchants at the bottom? Is the next question. Why was the farmer's importance to society placed above that of the artisan and the merchant? So remember, in Confucianism in general, and more specifically in Tokugawa society, there was a tendency to look down on the merchants, to regard the idea of buying and selling for profit as something vulgar and not worthy of proper Confucian pursuits. But of course, in the middle of the Tokugawa period, the merchants began to rise and eventually came to accrue more power, financial power at least, than the samurai, who were nominally at least at the top of the hierarchy. And question number 3, are occupations ranked this way today? Obviously not. So explain this transition that took place starting in the middle of the Tokugawa period, really, but especially in the Meiji period with the advent of modernity and westernization, in which the merchants sort of rose to the top, so that all of us today are now merchants, really. Alright, and here's the passage. Tokugawa Ieyasu on military government and the social order. Once Lord Taishō, or Ieyasu, conversed with Honda, Governor Sado, on the subject of the emperor, the shogun, and the farmer. Whether there is order or chaos in the nation depends on the virtues and vices of these three, the emperor, the shogun, and the farmer. The emperor, with compassion in his heart for the needs of the people, must not be remiss in the performance of his duties, from the early morning worship of the New Year to the monthly functions of the court. Secondly, the shogun must not forget the possibility of war in peacetime, and must maintain his discipline. He should be able to maintain order in the country. He should bear in mind the security of the sovereign, and he must strive to dispel the anxieties of the people. One who cultivates the way of the warrior only in times of crisis is like a rat who bites his captor in the throes of being captured. The man may die from the effects of the poisonous bite, but to generate courage on the spur of the moment is not the way of a warrior. To assume the way of the warrior upon the outbreak of war is like a rat biting his captor. Although this is better than fleeing from the scene, the true master of the way of the warrior is one who maintains his martial discipline even in time of peace. Thirdly, the farmer's toil is proverbial. From the first grain to 100 acts of labor. He selects the seed from last fall's crop and undergoes various hardships and anxieties through the heat of the summer until the seed grows finally to a rice plant. It is harvested and husked and then offered to the land steward. The rice then becomes sustenance for the multitudes, the yorozabito. Truly, the 100 acts of toil from last fall to this fall are like so many tears of blood. Thus it is a wise man who, while partaking of his meal, appreciates the 100 acts of toil of the people. Fourthly, the artisan's occupation is to make and prepare wares and utensils for the use of others. Fifthly, the merchant facilitates the exchange of goods so that the people can cover their nakedness and keep their bodies warm. So even the merchants who are at the bottom of this four-tier social hierarchy, even they have their proper role, which is namely to facilitate the exchange of goods so that the people can cover their nakedness and keep their bodies warm, so to make clothes and so forth. As the people produce clothing, food, and housing, which are called the three treasures, they deserve our every sympathy. Okay, and this is originally taken from Koro Shodan in Dai Nihon Shiryo, Part 12, Volume 24. All right, so we'll discuss this passage and we'll go over the 4 questions on the study sheet. 7 questions, I'm sorry. I read the first 3 at the beginning of this video. Here are the next 4 questions. Question number 1. How does Ieyasu conceive of the roles and responsibilities of the emperor and the shogun? Okay, so describe the respective roles of the emperor and the shogun. Question number 2. How does Ieyasu justify the society hierarchy in Tokugawa Japan? What is its justification? Number 3. How do Ieyasu's ideas reflect Confucian philosophy? How has that philosophy been adapted to suit the realities of Tokugawa Japan? Okay, and keep in mind that Confucianism had always been in the background, or had long been in the background of Japanese society. It's the origin of many of the names of titles and ranks and so forth in the aristocracy and in the government and so forth. These all come from Confucian names, Confucian traditions, but it really didn't form the backbone of Japanese society until the Tokugawa period. So Ieyasu and these early leaders of the Tokugawa period adopt Confucian philosophy, and Neo-Confucianism becomes sort of the bedrock for Japanese thought and for government and so forth in this period. So the question is, how do Ieyasu's ideas reflect Confucian philosophy? How has that philosophy been adapted to suit the new realities of Tokugawa Japan following this period of this Sengoku Jidai, the period of warfare and so forth? Question number 4. How do you think Ieyasu wanted to create a strict or why do you think he wanted to create a strict social hierarchy in Japan? What are his reasons for doing so? And obviously, this will relate to the previous period of warfare and chaos. All right, we'll discuss these in more depth in class. That is all for now. I will see you then. Goodbye.